The more preseason football predictions continue to roll in, the more you start to see the country really is taking notice of NC State football.
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Wolfpack Nation? It's time to get locked in with Locked On. Thanks for making Locked On Wolfpack your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Happy Tuesday to all. As always, I'm Grayson Boone, joined by former Wolfpack defensive tackle Kenton Gibbs. Kenton, we're going to start seeing a whole lot more of these post-spring, early fall preseason prediction lists rolling out for this college football season. The latest is perhaps the highest you might see NC State on any of these lists. Mark Schlabach, who is a senior writer for ESPN, he posted his post-spring top 25 rankings. I believe it was last week. We talked about Joel Klatt of Fox, who did not include NC State at all in his top 25. Schlabach of ESPN has NC State at 13 rolling into the summer. And if I remember correctly, 13 was what preseason rank NC State had in 2022.
Yeah, and you know what? That's a feature of what Doran has done at this program. He's now built to the point where there are expectations. He's built to the point where people expect things of you, and you have to show up every year. You don't get down years, rebuild years, all that. It's the expectation of every year you're supposed to be competitive. You're supposed to be one of the best teams in the conference, and that is why guys like you and me are so adamant that Doran needs a peak here because, again, the floor has undoubtedly been raised. It's been raised very high, but at a point, you start to ask yourself the same. It's like, are you the Penn State of the ACC? Like, you look like a really good team. You look like a conference championship competing team until an actual conference championship competing team comes along. So those are definitely some of the questions that are being asked here with this 13th ranking, but we're not there yet. We need to see this product proven on the field because I have a very sneaky suspicion that this year will be the year that, all of those expectations are met plus some.
We've talked a little bit about how the schedule has kind of shaped out for NC State and, all the roster additions. It kind of does feel like the stars have finally aligned for NC State football to really make a run at this thing. According to Schlabach's top 25 here, NC State is ranked ahead of any opponent they have on their schedule. They're 2 spots ahead of Tennessee. He has them at 15. Clemson is at 16. And if you want one more interesting team here, Kansas State, who we just lost to in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, is at 17. So clearly, Mark Schlabach is buying that stock early, which we've talked about. But Kenton, let me ask you this. In the event that NC State is ranked higher than any team they have on their schedule, 1, when's the last time you could even say that as a reality? And 2, how do you think Coach Doran, the team in the locker room, can address that preseason hype, but lock in and stay ready to go?
I don't think there is a way to stay locked in when you're ranked above all of your opponents and you haven't won anything yet. I don't think there is a way to be locked in with that. But the good news is, with all due respect to Mr. Schlabach, he is not the only writer there at ESPN. He is not the person that is going to be solely responsible for putting together these polls. So I am willing to bet my unborn child's first name that, this is not going to be a situation where I've always talked about you have to go through the proper paces. And to me, it would be skipping a step to never be the hunter that successfully hunted the big game, but then also now all of a sudden you become the hunted. No, you have to not only be the Florida State, be the Clemson in separate years, you have to string together a year where you find yourself in Charlotte and you not only show up, but you show out in Charlotte for people to sit there and say, well, wait a minute. There's something going on in Raleigh. They're doing the type of things in Raleigh that we can get behind and believe in. So honestly and truly, I'm a firm believer in there's no proper way to deal with the pressure of being the top dogs on the block if you've never taken down the top dog. I haven't in my lifetime seen the team successfully do so, who was just, they never got there. They never had to climb the mountain. They always got or they never even got close. They just we're somewhere near the middle of the mountain all the time, and then all of a sudden they just were perched at the top. I've never seen that. I've never seen that happen. So I think that this is in order to beat a man, you got to beat the man situation. And once they go out and prove that, then we can have the conversation of how do you maintain that? Because in those situations, you can go back to the team and say, y'all haven't won anything. Y'all haven't. Grayson McCall is the conference championship winning quarterback. Not you, Bailey, or Wilson, whoever turns out to be the starting quarterback out of that. You can say stuff like, hey, Aiden White was the ACC Defensive Player of the Year. He was the guy who had X amount of years with no touchdowns allowed him. Not you, Cisse. So what are we doing here? That kind of deal can come up when you want it and you have the proof to say, I know what it takes to get us there. Just follow me. At the moment, we don't have that proof. So you've posed a very good question, and a question that I think there is no correct answer to.
Another phrase I heard floated out there amongst the internet Twitter spheres, JD Bickel of On3 Network, he had about a minute and a half bit talking a little bit about some NC State football, and he kind of likened this program as cockroaches. And what he meant by that is they're hard to kill. Basically alluded to the fact that no matter what has happened these last couple of years, with Coach Dave Dorn at the helm, they're finding ways to win 8, 9, and potentially this year, 10-plus games. Injuries, tough schedules, bad bounces, you name it, they've been through it all, and they keep finding ways to win ball games. So I mentioned the national perception of NC State. It's growing. It's undoubtedly growing. And you're going to see a lot more of that throughout the continuation of the summer. Again, we've only really talked about just two preseason top 25 looks this early, and it's only May. There's going to be a billion more, and you're going to see NC State kind of all over the place. But I think the highest that you might see them might just come in this particular article, having them at 13. And again, we've talked about these primetime opportunities that they're going to have very early on. It sets the stage. We feel like the stars have aligned. The time is now. All the other missed opportunities of years past, it's prepared us for this moment. And we feel like it has finally arrived. So I really liked your point about you can't be the hunted unless you've been a very successful hunter. They need that mentality throughout this season. Once you strap them up and you're between the lines, it doesn't matter where you're ranked. You got to be hungry and you got to go get it. So that mentality has to stay constant. They can't afford to listen to too much of that outside noise. Some of it gets through. That's a given, but they can only buy into what they have in that locker room, whether it's Tennessee, Clemson, whatever. They need to feel like they are the hunter in any and every situation.
Oh, absolutely. And another thing that I look at and I point to when I talk about this team and the whole idea of, hey, you need a spike year here is, again, everything is aligned. Everything is aligned for you to have that type of year. Everything is aligned for you to go have a special year. And I talk about wearing the black hat a lot. Go earn your black hat. Go earn people despising you and no longer saying, oh, it's poor old NC State. Oh, it's little old NC State. Let's get all of the trophies in-house. And this is football going to Charlotte and winning there as well is a massive part of that.
In the context of NC State football being the cockroach that can survive a nuclear blast, maybe in 2024, NC State is the nuclear blast. Maybe they put the whole country on notice. They win the ACC. They get into the CFP. What better time than right now? Coming up next, we're talking about Trey Parker, freshman basketball guard that is now officially on campus. After a quick word from our sponsors. Our first sponsor of the day is LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to be able to find quality professionals that are just right for that role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. They help you hire professionals that you simply can't find anywhere else, and even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but maybe they're open to just the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So quite frankly, if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. Over 86% of small businesses can get a qualified candidate within just 24 hours. So you can hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn also knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats They simply might not have the time or resources to hire effectively. That's why LinkedIn is constantly finding new ways to make these processes easier. They've even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, which streamlines this process. Over 2.5 million small businesses are using LinkedIn for hiring. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Middle portion of our Tuesday show, now talking about Trey Parker of NC State men's basketball. Now, quick refresher, Trey Parker is an incoming freshman guard. He was supposed to be on last year's team before last summer. He decided that he would play another season in the Overtime Elite League. And I remember at that point in time, even ourselves were a little bit skeptical that he would, in fact, make it to NC State after that.
With good reason.
Good reason. And Kevin Keats, we know that he had this very unfortunate string of recruits that were committed or were already here, became a one and done, maybe a none and done. We all know how all of that went. People were very fearful that Trey Parker would be just another name on that list. He's not going to be on that list. So it is exciting to get him onto campus now officially, meaning that he will be on this squad this coming season. A lot of folks have also been wondering what type of role that he may play on this coming team. Kenton, we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but now that he's officially on campus, where do you see his role falling for this coming season?
You know, Trey Parker is so interesting because it's such a mixed bag with him. And you kind of look at him and you say, well, he's a little undersized for the two, but he's not necessarily a great guy in terms of the point guard position where you trust him to run an offense full time. He can get to the Baja with a lot of force now. When that young man gets to the rim, it can be something special. And also when his shot is cooking, he's cooking, but he can be a little streaky. So the question for him is going to be, what is the consistency and what does the defensive effort look like? Because it's not going to be good enough to give a night or two nights of 20-point games, and then after that, you go cold for 3-4 games. And it's not going to be enough if you cannot consistently produce on the defensive end, consistently create stops. Because the biggest difference between NC State in the regular season and the postseason, the defense was spotty in the regular season. There were times where they looked like the 04 Pistons in terms of how tough they were defensively on teams. And then there were times where they looked like it was 4.5 orange cones out there that weren't stopping anybody. So if he can add into a culture that buys in defensively, if he can add into that and be a net positive defensively, with his shooting stroke, we've already talked about the fact that this team needs some shooters. If he can come in and be a consistent shooter, he can be something special. But if that shot is a little bit streaky, like what we've seen out of him in the OTE league a little bit, he may not play a very big role this year.
Yeah, I think for Trey Parker to have immediate impact on this team, he's going to have to find something that really none of the other guys can have. And he is, like I've mentioned several times on here, he's a freak athlete, maybe the most athletic guy on this roster. Any building that you put him in, he can jump through the roof. He has that kind of bounce on him. And by now, I'm sure you've seen plenty of his dunk highlight videos because every single one of them is insane. And playing in the Overtime Elite, he's gotten a lot of buzz on social media. I believe Trey Parker himself on Instagram has over 500,000 followers. That's more than the NC State basketball team page itself. So he's going to bring a lot of eyes to this program. What can he bring to the court in just his freshman year? I don't exactly know yet. To be honest with you, I don't know if it will be much of a role. I think if you're looking at freshmen making an instant impact, I would lean Paul McNeil would probably be the bigger name to know there. But Trey Parker, like I mentioned, ridiculous athlete. And whether that's going in and getting rebounds or just being a stiff defender, for him to see additional time on the court this season, he's going to have to find a way to do something that not everyone else can do.
Yeah, and I want to say this, right? Although he did have some moments of very streaky shooting and of, kind of struggling to get his shot rolling, there were also times where, in the biggest moments when he needed to show up, he did so at a high clip. For example, during the playoffs for OTE this past season, he was shooting 37% from deep, So he is a guy that he has that clutch gene in him. He has that when he has to show up, he can do so. But again, it's about consistency. It's not, hey, don't get me wrong, the run was magical. It was nice. We don't want to always have to play 5 games in 5 days. That's not ideal. It is just statistically puts you in a bad situation. So, like I said, the consistency is the big thing. And he's a young guy. Consistency is a big part of what separates a lot of freshmen in terms of, are you good? Are you great? What's going on there? And so we'll definitely be seeing about him and seeing, whether or not he can have a big role or whether or not he's in a reduced role or maybe he redshirts, who knows?
Yeah, I think the number one priority for Trey Parker this year is just to be the best teammate you can be. Be an absolute sponge in that locker room, help and learn from every single other player in there, and just absorb everything in your freshman year. Because we all know the storyline, freshman coming in, he thinks he's the real deal, can't get on the court, can't crack the lineup, doesn't really know where he falls in this program, and then perhaps he's on the outs. Got to avoid that type of situation, because I do think Trey Parker is a guy with a little bit of an unknown ceiling. I don't know where the ceiling is, but I know it's way up there because he can probably touch it. You talked about him being a streaky shooter. I do believe that to be true. I think he needs to find a lot more consistency, both inside and outside the arc. Perhaps ball handling, just being a true point guard, is something that he can look into. Perhaps he can provide some supplemental help behind MOC and maybe even Breon Pass in that sense, because last year we were a little bit unsure where the majority of the ball handling would come from. Turns out MOC emerged as the best option. If we need additional help, maybe you could see Trey Parker step into a role like that. So to be an extremely valuable piece to this squad this year, just has to be the absolute best teammate he can be. Just needs to be a bit of a utility guy. Anything that the team needs, you need to be the best at whatever that thing is. Just provide any type of positive impact you can do. We talk a lot about struggling mid-season or mid-game, just finding some way to positively impact the team. Trey Parker falls under that category for this coming season. So we're extremely excited to get him on campus. It's just another step toward his progression in the red and white. A lot of folks that doubted we would ever see him get this far in his recruitment process, he's here now. So this is another recruiting win for Kevin Keatts, and we can't wait to see what he does on the court. Coming up next, we're closing out our Tuesday episode talking about the new assistant coach to Kevin Keatts' staff and what that will mean moving forward after a quick word from our sponsors. Our second sponsor of the day is Yahoo Finance. Wouldn't it be great if you could see all of your investment and retirement accounts in just one place? With Yahoo Finance, you can consolidate your views from multiple accounts into one hub and access the expert analysis that you need to tend to your entire portfolio. Let's get to the point. You want to grow your portfolio to deal with the rising cost of inflation, pay off your debt or your mortgage, and pretty much anything standing in the way of you and your financial freedom. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. Whether you're a seasoned investor or you're looking for that extra guidance, Yahoo Finance can give you all the tools and data that you need in one place. They are the number one finance destination, producing a holistic look at the financial news cycle, original editorial perspectives, analyst ratings, independent research, customizable charts, and so much more. You can securely link your brokerage accounts for a unified view of your wealth, including 401k and other investments. A comprehensive perspective is what sets apart great investors, and that's exactly how Yahoo Finance ensures that you have the insight to look at your wealth in its entirety. With a community of over 90 million users each month, their real strength is helping you on your way to financial success. For comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor. The number one financial destination, yahoofinance.com. Rounding out our Tuesday show, now talking about the last addition to Kevin Keatts' new coaching staff for the 2024-2025 season. Coach Keatts has added Brett Nelson recently of UMass to his coaching staff. And I'll tell you what, Coach Nelson has a long, extensive list of experience. Now, he played basketball at Florida in the early 2000s, was even a part of a team that reached the national championship. So this is a guy that is literally bred out of postseason success. And since the early 2000s, he's had stops at Colorado State, VCU, Marshall, Arkansas, Drake, Marquette, Ball State, Holy Cross, where he was a head coach, and last year at UMass, where he coached under the wing of Frank Martin, who you may know from his time at Kansas State and South Carolina. Kenton, what does it mean to bring in a new assistant coach with this much experience coming with him?
Brett Nelson is not only a guy that comes with a good amount of pedigree and has the head coaching experience and all that, but he's also a guy that, like you said, he comes from winning stock. He comes from doing the things that are how do I put this? He comes from a familiarity with winning. He comes with that experience, and this is something that I say a lot. It's winning is not accidental. And I know that a lot of people like say, well, Brett may not have been the guy on those teams and all that, and that may be true, but the reality is very simple, okay? When you create a situation of winning habits and guys who know what it takes to win, you know that, hey, just star in your role. You can more effectively tell players, hey, star in your role. I did it, and it worked out fairly well for me. He was a McDonald's All-American who, was not a 20-point-a-game guy or anything like that in college. And so he became familiar with that. Star in your role, do what you got to do to be the best that you can be in your role on this team. And again, phenomenal three-point shooter, which is something that we've talked about a lot in terms of, does this team need a shot doctor? Do they need somebody to just specifically work out that one thing? So, this is a great hire. I'm going to love to see what he does on the recruiting trail and all that. So it'll be a pretty good time to see, again, exactly how he can help this team and how he can help the players here develop.
Might just be a shot doctor indeed. And like you mentioned there, it really does feel like Coach Nelson is a product of coaching success. None of this happens by accident. And for Kevin Keatts, who propped himself up as a winner, you have to also surround yourself with winners. And we talked about when Joel Justice, who was previously on the staff, took the job to Ohio State. We talked about how success for a coaching staff more than likely will mean turnover in the offseason, but it's a good turnover. It means that other schools are taking note of your staff and all the recent successes, and they're saying, hey, we need a guy like Joel Justice to come join us. We need a guy like Levi Watkins to add to our staff because he can help us get to the next level. So Kevin Keatts bringing in other winners will just breed further success. And by all accounts, it does sound like Brett Nelson is a fantastic hire for this program. So we're certainly looking forward to all that he can bring to the table. Hopefully more championships to come. But this program having positive turnover again in back-to-back years, that is yet another sign of budding success. So you want to talk about continuing to raise the floor and the ceiling of a program, bringing in guys that have won continuously at other stops. That's exactly how you do it.
Yeah, former head coach, former All-American, former All-Conference guy. Hey, we're excited to see what he can do here at NC State. We're excited to see how he molds and develops players and goes out and gets the best players to bring in here at NC State.
That'll do it for us here on Tuesday. As always, thank you all so much for joining us. Be sure to hit that like button. Drop your comments in the comment box. Tell us what you think about NC State football's growing buzz this offseason and where you think that they might actually be ranked when the official preseason rankings come out, probably sometime in late July. Tell us what you think about Trey Parker officially making it to campus when he had many doubters that he would even get to this point, but he's an electrifying talent. Can't wait to have him. And tell us what you think about the newest hire for Kevin Keatts' coaching staff. If Brett Nelson will bring that winning culture with him to Raleigh and continue to produce winning. Be sure to hit that subscribe button as well. We will see you all tomorrow. And until then, go Pack.
Go Pack.